And then your children are turned into mindless vassals who now they look up to some twit instead of looking up to Thomas Jefferson or looking up to Nikola Tesla or looking up to Magellan. I mean, kids, Magellan's a lot cooler than Justin Bieber. He circumnavigated with one ship the entire planet. He was killed by wild natives before they got back to Portugal. And when they got back, there was only like 11 people alive of the 200 and something crew, and the entire ship was rotting down to the waterline. That's destiny. That's will. That's striving. That's being a trailblazer, an explorer, going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe. It's all there. Life is fiery with its beauty. It's incredible detail. Tuning into it. They want to shatter your mind talking about Justin Bieber.
They'll tell you that Alex is crazy, that he's dangerous. Well, I don't know about that crazy part, but I'm pretty sure he's not dangerous. Is there, whether you like the guy or not, can you tell me that there isn't value in reorienting people's perspectives on things that matter? The beauty that is life. Who you ought to be looking up to. The heroes that you ought to actually uphold. Come on. I'm going to miss that guy. I really hope that his channel survives. We'll see. Anyways, got a lot to cover today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Once again, this is Liberty Lockdown, Clint Russell. And we got some breaking news, kind of breaking. I mean, for you guys, this is going to be old hat. But for the rest of the world, this is far from old hat. This is, in fact, truly revelatory information. This is RFK breaking down the alleged assassination attempts of his uncle and his father.
Sirhan was waiting for my father in front of a steam table in the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel. It was a route my father was not supposed to have taken. He was supposed to go out through the ballroom, but someone led him through the kitchen and directly into this ambush. Sirhan was waiting and fired 2 shots at my father. The first shot hit Paul Schrade. The second shot hit a door jamb behind my father at head level and was later removed by the LAPD. He was then grabbed by 6 men, including the 1960 decathlon champion Rayford Johnson, who was one of my father's best friend, Roosevelt Greer, who was one of the fearsome foursome, and a number of other people. They grabbed him and they pointed his gun. They grabbed his hand first and bent him over the steam table. So he was on the steam table on his back, and they forced his arm away from my dad. Rayford Johnson later told me, although Sirhan is a tiny little guy, he had superhuman strength and that he could not pry the pistol from his hand. And Sirhan squeezed off 6 more shots and emptied the gun. Only eight, it was a revolver with only 8 shots in it. He never reloaded. All 6 of those shots hit people. So we know what happened to every shot in the gun. The audios show 14 shots being fired. My father was killed by 4 shots from behind. Sirhan was always 5 feet in front of him. And there was 77 eyewitnesses that he was always in front of me. He never was behind my dad.
The larger question is who, in other words...
Wait, if you give me 1 minute, I'll finish. And I think I'm going to answer your question. All of those shots, according to Noguchi, were contact shots, meaning that the shots were, the gun was touching my father's body and left a carbon tattoo. And they were fired from behind. The man who was standing there was a man named Eugene Caesar, who was the security guard who had led my father into the ambush. And he had one hand, his right hand was, or his left hand was holding my father's left elbow. He was standing behind him, and he had his gun drawn. He was witness with it. My father, when he died, fell, and I was with my dad when he died. When he fell, He fell backwards onto Cesar, and Cesar was on the floor below him. And my father must have known that he was being shot from behind, because the last thing he did was reach around and pull off Cesar's clip-on tie. And the photographs of my father on the floor have him with that clip-on tie in his hand. And Cesar then pushed him off and got up with his gun drawn, which everybody saw. He later told the police that he had been firing at Sirhan, but nobody ever saw that. There's no evidence of that. My father was shot 4 times. One of the shots went through his shoulder pad harmlessly and into the ceiling. The other shots were, fatal. The worst shot was the one behind his ear, but it left a carbon tattoo. And there's a recent book about Eugene Cesar. I had communications with Eugene Cesar, who died during COVID. But I was talking to him at that time and seeing if I could come visit him. He'd moved to the Philippines. He was an avowed racist. He hated my family. He had gotten the job 2 days before as a security guard at a security company. He had never been employed as a security guard before. His real job was at the Lockheed and formerly the Hughes airline plants in Los Angeles, which are CIA operations.
So to recap, we have a top 3 presidential candidate for the presidency of the United States going around the country, touring the country on the campaign trail, trying to educate the potential voters as to what he believes happened to both his father and his uncle. Now, there's another clip where he goes into details about JFK. I'll spare you that one. It's similar conclusion too, in that he believes that the United States government, namely the CIA, was responsible. Now, I haven't dug deep enough to have a super firm conclusion. I have dug enough in the past to definitely be certain that it is not the purported story that we've been told from the news media and from our government. But I think that what's really remarkable about this is that this is a top 3 presidential candidate who is talking about his relatives, one of which was the president of the United States and the other was likely to be a president of the United States. And it is his fervent belief that they were both assassinated by his own government, the government that he wants to preside over. And yet, you get no coverage of this. You get no conversations from the political class or the media class. No one seems to care. Now, I know that for this audience, this is kind of old hat. This is stuff that we all kind of have already thought for the longest time, and we've all wanted to have additional disclosures, and Trump promised that, and we were all very disappointed when he didn't give the full disclosures. But setting that aside, set aside our opinions. Let's go into Normieville and think about what this means to them. That you have everything I've already laid out. You have such a profound claim that's being made, whether you believe it or not. And as I said, I haven't dug deep enough to be certain. But given that he's talking about his father and his uncle, his family, do you think that he might have done a decent amount of research into it? Does he talk about it as if he doesn't know what he's talking about? Or does it sound as if, yeah, I mean, if it was your dad, would you have dug enough to have come to somewhat of a firm conclusion? Yeah, me too. So I'm going to take his claim seriously. I'm not going to take it at face value, but I'm going to take it seriously. Now, whether or not you believe he's correct, is it not newsworthy that we have a guy who has a viable, sure, slim chance, but still a viable path to the presidency, who is making these claims, and the news media doesn't even see fit to debunk them, to report on them at all? This gets zero coverage. And this is not the first time RFK Jr. has said this. He has been saying it for years. And he has been saying it very loudly for the past few months, and no one seems to care. And I think there's lots of explanations for why that may be. And I think at its core, it's probably because those that already do know think that everybody does know. And they've already given up on the hope of justice, on the hope of this system actually being reformed. They've kind of just acquiesced. They've decided it's over. The Republic is gone. I had Ron Paul on just a few days ago, and he said exactly that there was a coup in the 1960s, and ever since then, the Republic has been gone. Perhaps so. And particularly so if the Fourth Estate, if the media, doesn't see fit to even report on these claims, well then, yeah, I guess it is lost. But I just think it's really profound that they won't even give it amplification. Like, he's got a lot of other claims that they have no problem bringing up and debunking when it comes to the vaccine schedule and things like that. They will absolutely obliterate RFK Jr. and they will talk about it incessantly. But they don't really talk about this now, do they? Why? Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think it's because he's telling the truth. And they really don't want that out there now, do they? It's fascinating that given that this guy is willing to say such a dangerous truth, assuming he's correct, and yet he still doesn't demonstrate that level of courage when it comes to Israel-Palestine. I don't understand it. Perhaps there are graver threats to you and I than just the United States government. Something to ponder. But what I really want to do is just absolutely chastise, condemn to the end of the earth, the media who do not see fit to even have a conversation about what he is saying. Could it be a more profound claim that you live in a nation in which former presidents and former future presidents and favorites to be the next president were assassinated by your government, and they don't want to talk about it even? Despite the fact that there's been hundreds of books written, documentaries, dramas, movies upon movies upon movies upon books. This is not much of a secret. And yet, in the land of the free, the home of the brave, we don't discuss it whatsoever. Well, I think that should stop. I think that we ought to demand answers to these questions. At very least, a fair hearing to his seemingly credible concerns. And if we don't, then what are we even debating over? What are we even fighting for? What will this election bring us? I don't think it's going to be justice. This is a bit of a hard topic turn, but I wanted to cover this because I've given very positive coverage to El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, in the past. I think what he's done has been miraculous, to put it lightly. But his latest dictate today concerns me. And I wanted to explain why. I posted about it, and I had a lot of pushback from people that seemed to think that price controls are acceptable. And I wanted to talk about that. And I know it's kind of economics 101 for my Austrian folks, but I think it's an important lesson, or at least an explanation that I need to give for those that disagree with me so that they may consider it. Now, he speaks in Spanish, so I'm going to have to read it to you. I will make an appeal like the one we made to the gangs at the beginning of 2019. We told them to stop killing or not to... Well, I'm going to give a message to importers, retailers, wholesalers, and food distributors. Stop abusing the Salvadoran people or don't complain later. Because everything is on the books and you know it. You know the crimes you have committed. It will not be a fine what we are going to put out on them for the increases in food prices. Do not complain later. I hope that tomorrow the food will be at a lower price than it is now. It's not a joke. As we told the gangs in 2019, and they realized that it was not a joke, right? So importers, distributors, retailers, and wholesalers of food, stop abusing. There are increases that are justified, I agree. Did it go up 10%? It went up 10%. But because of a rumor, it went up twice. That's an abuse. And you know the crimes you have committed in recent years. And well, we were busy with the gangs. We didn't have time to go after those other crimes, but now we do have time. Stop abusing. I hope the price will be lower tomorrow, or you will have problems. So the initial pushback that I got from most people was that, well, this guy has taken on an immense amount of power, and he's turned around this country in a very short amount of time. I think that we ought to give him grace to see what he does. Assume that he's going to deal with this properly, and that the abuses that he's talking about are price fixing across different conglomerates and things like that. Maybe so. But I'll tell you, the reason I was so hesitant to give any verbal support to Bukele is because what he was taking on was an extraordinary task, but with that, he took on an extraordinary amount of power for himself. And with that comes a huge responsibility. And with that, given that he's talked about free markets and capitalism and opening up his country to the world economy and making them a very prosperous nation, this does not signal that to me. So the second pushback that I got was that, well, these are probably multinational corporations that are abusing El Salvador as kind of a payback for him, bucking the world order or whatever. Okay, perhaps. But I think the obvious answer, regardless of whatever you think the circumstances are of the prices rising there, the obvious answer ought to be to deregulate that market. That anytime you see only a handful of suppliers in any particular industry, it's likely not because of IP, particularly when it comes to food, which is largely what he's talking about, right? Well, there's certainly no IP on food. I mean, unless you're talking about seeds, Monsanto and whatnot. But for the most part, if you want to get cheaper food, you can import it, or you can grow it more cheaply, or you can open up competition and it'll drive down prices. He didn't mention that once in that rant, now did he? No, he did not. That concerns me. It concerns me that his knee-jerk reaction is to just say that these price rises are, monopolistic practices, and therefore I'm going to browbeat you into dropping prices. Tell me how this is dissimilar, or not exactly the same thing, as what Joe Biden has been saying over the past year, 2 years, 3 years, that every price hike we've seen at the grocery stores is just, it's either because of Putin or it's because of corporate greed. In reality, it's because of printing. Now, I can't speak to the exact inflationary pressures or how profligate the spending has been in El Salvador, and if the government itself is responsible for the price increases. I don't know. But I can tell you that setting price caps is going to create shortages. It's not going to create additional supplies of goods. That's just simple economics. So if you are in fact trying to drive down prices, sure, you may be able to browbeat these corporations into dropping their prices temporarily, but a long-term solution is to open up the market, to deregulate it. Anytime you see a handful of suppliers that are monopolizing a particular industry, it is usually because they are receiving protectionist policies from the government itself. And I would imagine that it's not Nayib's fault that this is the paradigm that he finds himself in. I would imagine that this is the policies of past administrations that has created essentially an oligopoly in this industry. Now, that's not his doing, so therefore it's not his fault. However, what he prescribes in this moment matters a hell of a lot, because it signals to the not just the business economy within El Salvador as to what they're going to do, but it also signals to the rest of the world, including people like me, people that were considering becoming expats and moving to El Salvador, that perhaps this economy is not going to be free. And that is not a good signal to send to the rest of the world. Now, is it? I don't think so, particularly when you are trying to bring your economy out of abject poverty and lift it into affluence. You're going to want entrepreneurs to want to move to your country. Well, if you're going to be setting price caps, what appears to be arbitrary price caps, well, then I'm not going to bring my business there, now am I? And I'm not the only one that's thinking it. It's going to be a lot of people that think that. That's not good for your economy. So, my argument is that what he is doing is essentially socialist. That if you set price caps in communist Russia, you're going to end up with shortages and starvation. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to maintain this policy long enough, or he's going to be so strict with this policy that it actually creates that dire of a circumstance. But I will argue that it will not be to the benefit of the economy broadly, and it will probably not bring down prices long term. The way you bring down prices like long term is to increase supply. And if you increase supply, then demand and supply will find an equilibrium, which will allow for the price to come down. And also, if you increase competition, that'll force these other oligarchs that, if he is correct, that they are in fact hiking their prices extraordinarily above market rates, well, the market rate will come down because there will be competitors that say, oh, you want to sell these bananas for $5? I'm going to sell them for $2.50. All of a sudden, everybody's buying from this new guy. Well, that's how you actually compete and drive down prices in a free market mechanism. He's not describing that. He's describing, I'm going to drag you guys out of your boardrooms and I'm going to throw you in jail like I did the cartels. That ain't free market by any stretch of the imagination. That's totalitarian. And I think that it doesn't do him or us or the Liberty Movement or anything else, or the people of El Salvador for that matter, any good to lie about what he's saying there. I speak a decent amount of Spanish. That translation's not wrong. What he's saying there is a dictator-like rant about pricing. It sounds just like Joe Biden. And when Joe Biden says it, it is pretty much magnanimous or unanimous that we all recognize he's an idiot. He's full of shit. And that he ought not to be prescribing that for the American economy. And that, in fact, he's lying about the origin of those price hikes. As I said, I can't say definitively that it's exactly the same thing or that it's exactly as reprehensible as when Joe Biden does it, but I can say it is the wrong prescription. And I will not bite my tongue to try and bow to the Christian nationalists that love Bukele and think that he can do no wrong. I think that this is wrong. And I think that this is going to prove to be ultimately his downfall. Because with that immense amount of power that he took on to beat down the cartels, well, if he maintains that outlook and thinks that he is omnipotent and all-powerful and can do no wrong moving forward, well, he's going to make some really major missteps. And I think this might be the first of them. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope he changes course. And I hope that this is very temporary. We'll see. But in the interim, let's be honest about what we're seeing here. And I don't think it's a free market prescription by any stretch of the imagination. Health insurance can sure be confusing, frustrating, and expensive to boot. That's why today's sponsor is Crowd Health. Stop sending your money to big insurance companies who profit off of not paying your bills and check out Crowd Health. Health insurance processes can be brutal to deal with. Then you feel like you're being taken advantage of, and all that money that you paid, you're like, am I even getting any value out of this? Well, for just $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you'll get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, and so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. Let Crowd Health help with your healthcare needs. Get started today for just $99 per month for your first 3 months by using code LOCKDOWN at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. Again, that's joincrowdhealth.com, code LOCKDOWN.
Let me very quickly ask you about the vice president. You saw the polling. One poll shows her doing better against former President Trump. Do you think she's a stronger candidate to take on Donald Trump?
I think the vice president would be a phenomenal president. I think she has the experience, the judgment, the leadership ability to be an extraordinary president.
Could she win overwhelmingly, Congressman?
I think she very well could win overwhelmingly. But before we get into a decision about who else it should be, the president needs to make the decision whether it's him. I don't want to get into a debate. I don't think it's good for the party to get into a debate over, okay, if not him, then whom? But rather, let's focus on the fundamental decision.
So that was Shifty Adam Schiff. He is a congressman. He was on MSNBC or NBC this just yesterday morning. And this guy is as read in as deep state as it gets. And the fact that he is fielding this question, not to mention it's coming from NBC News, tells me that, yeah, the wheels, they are a-moving. They are trying to oust Joe Biden. They have decided, after 4 straight years, if not longer, of lying through their teeth and pretending that the emperor had clothes, that in fact he's naked. Now they want to tell you the truth. Oh, because they care about the truth. No, it's because they all got marching orders. And I covered this last week a bit, but I think that now we have a tremendous amount of evidence. I'm going to play you a handful of clips just to demonstrate my case here, that the higher-ups, keep in mind, Adam Schiff was on the Intel committee. This guy is deep state. He lied non-stop about the Russian collusion stuff. He is just a mouthpiece for the regime. He doesn't say anything that they don't want him to say. He is purely a company man, and I think you know which company I'm talking about. So, when he starts to talk about this type of shift in tactics, I take note. When Nancy Pelosi starts to do so, yeah, it's a good time to take note. Let's listen to Nancy real quick.
My people are very much Biden, Kamala Harris, and this is an opportunity for Joe Biden to go out there and show he has the stamina and the rest. And by the way, while the press, and for some reason they don't, there are healthcare professionals who think that Trump has dementia, that his connection, his thoughts do not go together.
Believe not your eyes or ears. Just project, project, project. The iron law of woke projection, as James Lindsay coined long ago. Man, could it be more obvious? Oh, in fact, no, Joe's perfectly fine. It's in fact Donald Trump who's lost his mind. I don't buy it, Nancy. Sorry. Because I actually have functioning eyes and ears, and I can judge for myself. Thanks. Now we have David Axelrod, former chief strategist to Barack Obama on CNN. Let's hear what he had to say.
It's just there are certain immutable facts of life, and those were painfully obvious on that debate stage, and the president just doesn't seem to he hasn't come to grips with it. He's not winning this race. He's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly.
You think David Axelrod, former chief strategist to Barack Obama, might be read in? Yeah, I think so. And do you think he's allowed to go out there and say that publicly without authorization from the higher-ups? No, I don't think so. And do you think CNN would have him on if they didn't want to field that type of messaging? Yeah, I don't think so. So, conclusion, yeah, the knives are out. They're coming. They have decided that they're moving on. And to prove my case even further, Kamala Harris herself, who has been high as a kite for the past 4 years, in my humble opinion, can't prove that, but she seems as if she's been about a bottle of wine deep every single time she's had to speak publicly for 4 years straight. She's suddenly sober, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out.
When the United States Supreme Court essentially told this individual who has been convicted of 34 felonies that he will be immune from essentially the activity he has told us he is prepared to engage in if he gets back into the White House. Understand what we all know. In 122 days, we each have the power to decide what kind of country we want to live in. Understand what we know. When there has been a full-on intentional attack against hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. When I talk about the family that raised me, yes, they took me in a stroller as they were marching and shouting for justice, knowing that justice will not be achieved unless we are prepared to march and shout and fight for it. And one of the ways we do that is through our vote.
Now, I don't know about y'all, but I haven't seen Kamala Harris that coherent in many years. Literally every time I hear her speak, it's the passage of time. You know, time is passing, and that's what time is passing. The passage of time is passing. And then, the wheels on the bus, how buses are so neat. What other hits has she had over the past few years? Unburdened from what has been, so that the future may be what it will be, and now it's unburdened from what it was. That nonsense Marxist trope. She's finally speaking in cohesive sentences, or at least coherent ones. I have to take this as she knows it's game time. Now, there has been people theorizing that in fact she has been dumbing herself down to not outshine Joe Biden over the past 3+ years. I don't buy that. I think she was high as a kite or she was drunk. That's my personal opinion. I can't prove it, but that's kind of the vibe I got. And I think that she was told, hey, next batter up. And she's like, oh, I better not drink today. So she goes out there and she lays out, in my opinion, the best performance she's had in many years. And I think that signals that she's taking it seriously. And I think that when you look at all of the higher ups in the DNC, like real political apparatchiks that would be in the know, that would have been read in, that they are openly questioning whether or not Joe Biden is able to function anymore. And they're signaling that Kamala Harris is the gal. Well, there's a reason for that. And I think that the primary reason is that whether or not they like Kamala, they know Joe ain't going to beat Trump. That's really bad for someone like Adam Schiff, who's probably fearful of reprisals after all of the shenanigans he pulled against Trump. So my assumption is that Kamala is she's the man on deck, right? But the real reason is that whether or not they like Kamala is that my understanding is that despite the fact that the DNC changed their policy so that if Biden stepped down, she could step up, what they didn't change, allegedly, is that the war chest, the $175 million or so that has been raised for Joe Biden's reelection campaign can only be transferred to her. Now, they could, theoretically, force both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to drop out entirely, in which case, theoretically, the delegates at the DNC convention could select who will be their candidate and they would get those funds. But my understanding is that that's not necessarily possible, and it's certainly not possible if both Joe and Kamala don't voluntarily drop out. And as of today, Joe is still signaling he ain't gonna go. He's in this for the long haul. Blah, blah, blah. I don't buy it. At the end of the day, I don't think that Joe Biden's going to be with us at the end of his next term if he were to win re-election. So I think that's all kind of a joke. I don't say that with any glee or anything. I'm just being honest. Like, with his decline, I'd be very surprised if by 2029, Joe Biden is still here. Right? I mean, you look at him, you look at the decline over the past 4 years. Do you see him 4.5 years from now still being with us? Probably not. So it's like Kamala's going to be the president of the United States if he were to win. But I think the reality is he can't win. And just to prove out my case slightly further, we have, once again, Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff saying it a little bit more explicitly.
So we have all these things that he was masterful in helping to orchestrate, to write, and to pass. So he has a vision, he has knowledge, he has judgment, he has a strategic thinking, and the rest. He has a bad night. Now, again, I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition?
But the performance on the debate stage, I think, rightfully raised questions among the American people about whether the president has the vigor to defeat Donald Trump. And this is an existential race. Given Joe Biden's incredible record, given Donald Trump's terrible record, he should be mopping the floor with Donald Trump. Joe Biden is running against a criminal. It should not be even close, and there's only one reason it is close, and that's the president's age. And what I would say, Kristen, what I would advise the president is seek out the opinions of people you trust. He's obviously talked to his family about this, and that's important. But he should seek out people with some distance and objectivity. He should seek out pollsters who are not his own pollsters. He should take a moment to make the best informed judgment. And if the judgment is run, then run hard and beat that SOB.
Oh, this race is existential, huh, Shifty? I wonder who it's existential for, huh, buddy? Yeah. But look, the signaling that he's giving there is, hey, your family's telling you to stay in. You need to get some other advisors. Why would he say that otherwise, right? I mean, it's about as clear as you can say it without just coming out and just saying it. Drop out Joe. Nancy Pelosi saying, I think it's fair to question whether or not it was just an episode or a condition. You don't put that idea out into the ether unless you work for the GOP or you're in the DNC and you've decided that Joe has to go. So I am concluding that, in fact, Kamala Harris, within probably the next week, will be the Democratic presidential candidate. Look, I don't say that with any joy whatsoever. This lady is a nightmare. And despite the fact that I said that she sounded coherent for the first time in 3 years, that ain't a compliment. The lady is just brutal to listen to. The cackling is secondary to the fact that her ideas are awful. She is awful. I've already described what she did as the DA or whatever her position was in the state of California. She sucks. I am not a fan. But she's just a perfect conduit for the existing regime. She wants power above all else. She will do whatever it takes to get it. She will pass and write whatever bills or laws, and she'll veto whatever you want. She'll declare whatever wars you want. She will do whatever it takes to get that throne. I have no doubt in my mind. Just like Adam Schiff and Pelosi and all these other demons would. So I am not looking forward to her potentially being the president of the United States, particularly when we are on the verge of a world war, potentially, economic fallout, all sorts of serious issues that we're facing, tens of millions of migrants. I mean, it's crazy. We're up against it big time. So I don't want her to be the president of the United States, and I don't even want her to be the candidate, despite the fact that I think she's eminently beatable, just simply because I don't know what's going to happen on Election Day. And it scares the hell out of me, just as it would have scared me if Gavin Newsom was the candidate, despite the fact that I think he's probably beatable too. It's still horrifying. I do not want someone that I am literally fearful of being in that position. So I don't say this lightly. I'm just reading the tea leaves here, and I'm telling you, she sobered up for the first time in 3 years. Everyone's finally coming out of the woodwork in the DNC, in the full, the power structure, right up at the top. All of their top spokespeople are coming out simultaneously saying, look, I think it's fair to question if Joe's too old for this, if he lacks the vigor, if his cognitive decline is temporary or systemic, They don't say any of that shit unless they have talked this through. So, conclusion, he's gone. This guy is going to drop out. I am calling it now. Could I be proven wrong? Sure. I've gotten predictions wrong in the past, but I'm pretty confident on this one. He does not seem as if he is their chosen candidate, and I think that if they have the leverage to squeeze him, to get him to drop out against his will, because he still doesn't want to go, because he's also a power-hungry psychopath, just like Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom and all these other lunatics, Whitmer. He doesn't want to go, but I think at the end of the day, the powers that be will squeeze him and get him to acquiesce to their demands, and their demands are that, God help us all, Kamala Harris will be his replacement. Dear God. Today's episode is once again brought to you by our friends at Nadeau Shave Co. Tired of the razor burn irritation and ingrown hairs caused by deep penetrating multi-blade cartridges? Big Shave has been psyoping the American people for decades with their expensive multi-blade razor scam. Return to the traditional shave. You don't need those expensive plastic replacement cartridges. Their high-quality, long-lasting stainless steel razor blades give you a precise, clean shave that won't jack your face up. Shave like your grandfather used to. The unique twist-open handle found on their electroplated brass traditional safety razors make changing blades simple and safe. It's true. I've used it. It's great. Whether you're shaving your entire face or just edging up your beard, their single blade provide a barber-grade shave for a fraction of the price. Upgrade your shaving system today. Their standard issue includes 100 stainless steel razor blades. It's plastic-free, it's 100% recyclable, and $75, that's it, allows you to shave for an entire year. Sign up for their Quarter Shave Club. Members receive a major discount on their shavers and pay only 25 cents per replacement blade. They are happy to introduce their brand new shave soap made with French green clay. Ditch that propane-infused crap Big Shave crams into a can and try out their all-natural soaps, handmade in the good old US of A. Pick up one of their 3-in-1 body, hair, and face soap bars, too. Take down Big Shave and visit NadeauShaveCo.com for all your grooming needs. Use LOCKDOWN for 10% off. That's NADEAU shaveco.com. Get you some. A quick jovial interlude to cheer us all up.
Built that in where they're going to turn off those mics so that somebody can't ramble.
Get away with it, get rid of the ability of Medicare
or scream at somebody.
You're the sucker. You're the loser.
Not that my husband would be the one doing that. You need to see Trump, and you need to see the president, and you need to see the differences.
Yeah, we noticed.
My husband's, and you're going to see how smart he is.
dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if
He is, and the experience he has.
we finally beat Medicare.
Look, the guy's toast. He's toast. I mean, he's like triple baked toast. He's burnt toast. He's inedible toast. You got to get rid of the toast. The toast isn't going to work. Okay, you can't. We're going to starve. The guy's a mess. He's a mess. But even as I've said before, even when he was, coherent and still with us mentally, he was a piece of shit. He's a terrible, terrible human being. He's largely responsible, if not like the number one person responsible, next to maybe Victoria Nuland, for the war in Ukraine. I despise this guy. Don't take my word for it. Here's his attempt to rehabilitate his image when he talked to whatever his name is. I can't remember his name, Papadopoulos or whatever. I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Elections are about the future, not the past. They're about tomorrow, not yesterday. And the question on so many people's minds right now is, can you serve effectively for the next 4 years?
George, I'm the guy that put NATO together, the future. No one thought I could expand it. I'm the guy that shoved Putin down. No one thought could happen. I'm the guy that put together the South Pacific Initiative with AUKUS. I'm the guy that got 50 nations, out, not only in Europe, outside of Europe as well, to help Ukraine. I'm the guy that got Japanese to expand their budget. For example, when I decided we used to have 40% of the computer chip, and we invented the chip, that little chip.
So he reinvented the computer chip. Look, setting aside how laughably pathetic that performance was, that this is his scripted, tape-delayed attempt at rehabilitating his image to make you think that his brain still functions. Setting all that aside about how pathetic that was, by the way, the fake tan, hysterical. They're trying to make him look like Trump or something. He still comes across terribly. Anyways, the merit of his arguments is that I'm the guy that expanded NATO. I'm the guy that shut Putin down. No, you didn't. No, absolutely, you fucking did not. You have escalated this to the point that we're like fearful that nuclear war might break out. You didn't shut him down. He's still going. I don't know what you're talking about. But then he just goes on and on and on about it. All the money that's been going there, NATO expansion, everything that Vladimir Putin has been saying for years now, very loudly, but over a decade quietly, that this is the red line. Don't cross it. Ukraine and NATO, never going to happen. And if you force it, it'll force us to invade. And we don't want to have to make that decision. The Niet means Niet memo. We've talked about this 1,000 times. You guys already know it. He's been very explicit. Joe Biden's sitting up there trying to argue that he deserves a second term, that you should still have faith in him as commander-in-chief because he's responsible for all the provocations that Vladimir Putin has been claiming from high heaven, and everyone's been denying. He's just coming out and saying it. We've expanded NATO. Yeah. We've shipped crazy amounts of money and military equipment, and in fact, we are responsible. America, Joe Biden himself, is responsible for all of that military equipment that has made this war last for 2+ years and hundreds of thousands of casualties. And he's bragging about it. This is how he signals to you he deserves another 4 years. I reject that claim. In fact, it's the number one reason, in my humble opinion, he ought not to be the president for the next 4 years and should have never been. So, I rest my case. The guy's got to go. Now, that is not to say that I'm gleeful about Kamala taking his spot, because I think she could be even worse if that's imaginable. And I'm also not even gleeful that it might be Donald Trump, because I have no idea if this guy is up to the task, because it is going to be a monstrous one. But Joe ought to go, and I think he's about to. I really do. So stay tuned.
And this slimeball Gavin Newsom, this snake in the grass, this serpent, he lives on a vineyard. He believes in nothing. He's an empty suit. He's the most conservative member of California's governing apparatus, which will tell you something. I do not like him as a politician, but I actually dislike him as a person more than a politician. But I do respect him. Now, how can I hold all those thoughts in my head at once? I'll tell you how. I respect his treachery. I fear it. If I were near him in a room, I'd be scared of what he'd do. He'd poison you. He'd kiss you on the cheek. He'd have the brakes taken out of your car. Of course, he can't do it himself. He'd have someone do it. His treachery is to be respected the way you'd respect a cobra.
I wanted to give us a little levity. Shout out to Tim Dillon. Man, as a guy from California like myself, he gets it. Or excuse me, he's from New York, but he lived in California for years. He gets it. So, silver lining in all this is that if I'm right, and then in fact the war chest can only transfer to Kamala and they've decided that Joe's got to go, well then it ain't going to be Gavin. And God bless America. That's the greatest news of all the news. Because trust me when I tell you, I don't think there's a more dangerous living human being than him. I know that sounds hyperbolic. I honestly think it. He's that dangerous because he's actually able to sell the snake oil. He's actually able to trick people into thinking that he's doing, I don't know, progressive shit when he's like the most hoity-toity, rich, white asshole you've ever met in your life. And they're just like, this guy's progressivism 101. He's like the best. Like, what? This is everything you rail against in terms of rhetoric. He's just like obviously reprehensible on every level. Like if he was a Republican, I think there'd be rallies from Antifa against him. But because he's a Democrat, everyone's just like, he's cool. What? I don't know. Anyways, he ain't going to be the guy. I'm pretty confident at this point. If I get this one wrong, I'm going to be devastated. But that's the silver lining in all this. Bye-bye, Gavin. We'll see you in 28, you fucking lunatic. You're so dangerous. I'm horrified of your very existence. Please don't ever run for president. I beg of you. You've already destroyed my home state. God knows what you do to the United States of America. Sincerely. Everybody with a functioning brain. Sincerely, don't do it. Thank you. Look, if you guys enjoyed the show, please do hit the like button. Share it around. Subscribe if you haven't. You should certainly subscribe. We're approaching 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much. If you want to continue to support the show in the free way, you can just leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That helps with the algorithms. We're absolutely crushing it right now. Really appreciate you guys. I've only been doing an episode a week because I've been so worn out doing the other shows and everything else. My life has been very hectic. But as I've been saying repeatedly, I'm going to get you more episodes. I promise. Well, here I am. Ron Paul, Ian Carroll, solo episode, all within 5 days. I'm delivering at long last. So if you would like to support the show, easiest way to do so, libertylockdown.locals.com. You could sign up to become a supporting member. It's very cheap, and it actually does help because we get enough people that are doing it. Makes it more lucrative so I can actually grow the show. And also at Liberty Lock Pod on X, subscribe there. And that's a cheap way to do it too, $5 a month. Boom. We're in business. Leave a comment. I do respond. I do read them all, and I do reply periodically. So appreciate that. And last but not least, just keep being awesome. Huh? All right. Peace.
Hi, my name is Beau Biden, Attorney General of the state of Delaware. I'm here to talk to you about something that's very important to me and to my office, senior abuse, which falls into one of 3 categories: abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation. For every one of these types of crimes that's reported to our office, 5 go unreported. But 2 million senior Americans are affected every year. And 80% of these crimes are committed by family members against their so-called loved one. We need your help. Seniors need your help.
Oh, Bo, if only you could see what Jill's doing to Joe right now. All right, guys. Later.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. Please scan your barcode. Your liberty ain't gone, but yeah, it's on hold. Where did it come from and where did it go?